Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to our virtual workshop. Thank you for joining us. My name is Michelle Diaz and I'm the Education Program Manager at Trees Atlanta. Today, we're going to be talking about native plants. I'm going to cover a few things here on how to use Zoom and introduce the speaker. Then the speaker, Scott Braslow, will be talking about a few of his favorite plants and some techniques on planting and maintenance. So thank you for joining us. Trees Atlanta mission is to protect and improve Atlanta's urban forest by planting, conserving, and educating. We host education events throughout the year, and because of our current situation, we're hosting them virtually. So we hope you can join us for more classes. You can ask questions. The speaker would love to hear your questions and your comments, but please use the chat or the Q&A tool. And Andrew, who's our youth education coordinator, and he's in the field today with our speaker, he'll be reading the questions to the speaker. And virtual education is something very new still for Trees Atlanta, so we will love your feedback. We will send you a survey email after the class, and please let us know what did you think about the class, if you have any ideas of topics we should be covering, if you'd like to learn about anything else. We invite you to join us on Saturday, June 27th at 10 a.m. for Scott's next class, and this one will be about invasive plant identification. And for more, to register for these or any other classes that we're hosting, please visit treesatlanta.org/calendar, and you'll find the full listing of volunteer projects and education programs. And to stay in touch with us, please follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter. And our speaker today is Scott Braslow. He's been volunteer for years with Trees Atlanta. Thank you so much for your support, Scott. And again, the agenda will be, he'll be covering his favorite native plants and some techniques on planting and maintenance. So I hope everybody enjoys it. I'll be here and Andrew will be here moderating this class. So feel free to do type any comments or questions. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Scott, as Michelle kindly introduced me. I'm really happy this morning to have a lot of people on the call. I think there are about 50 people, or that's what are expected today. I'm really excited because today's discussion is about something I've cared a lot about over the years. I've been a volunteer with Trees Atlanta probably 20 years almost, and my yard, which initially was just like for a homeowner, someone who bought a house. Anyways, sorry, excuse me. Natives are something, and the transition from your typical lawn yard to something different, something more unique, something a little bit better for the environment, maybe something a little more exciting with the different native plants that you might choose, different native trees certainly, is something that I just really became passionate about. And so for the last 10 years especially, I've just continued to invest myself in doing a good job and setting a good example in my own yard for my neighbors. And today's class and what we're doing today virtually is something that I never would have thought would have been possible. That this many people would have been interested in native plants, would have been interested in, not that everybody's interested in the exact same thing, but on the subject of something other than grass. I'm really excited that there's so many people listening today. So hopefully I'll be able to share with you some of my knowledge, some of my ideas for different ways to take care of your own green space. I have some things written down, so excuse me, but I wrote down, I really think it would be glorious if everyone had lush green spaces in the front and backyards. 20 years ago, I was fortunate enough to buy a house. Early on, I had grass. I was trying to grow grass. I had leaf blowers. I had lawn mowers. I had all the mechanical equipment to keep up with my yard. I use different, I hate to say chemicals for the different things people use it for. Anyways, what I've moved to and what I realized was that all the other yards were doing this exact same thing. It wasn't particularly exciting, and it certainly wasn't fun mowing the lawn and breathing the fumes of these different machines. So anyways, that's when I decided, probably about 10 years ago, that like when I first started planting plants, you know, I don't know, I actually put a sign, which I don't think you can see on the video. It's an arboretum sign that I created for my yard. And it was something just for myself. It wasn't I don't want to, it's not about what I have and how many plants I can have in my yard. It was really about practicing with the different species and to see what grew well. And what I wanted to talk about today certainly has a lot to do with me sharing that information. I think, you know, I'll go ahead and jump into what we are covering today. And there were three different areas that I wanted to cover today. One was plants which do well in Atlanta. Not everybody on this call may be from Atlanta. Maybe some other folks are from other cities in the South or in the country, but I think it's a challenge. I mean, we want sometimes finding a plant, and I think that might even be a question some of you may have, is where can you get, I'm being advised to throw on some, he's gonna work with, all right. Okay, excuse me for the, can you hear me? Cool, awesome. Okay, plants which do well in Atlanta. So that's one thing I'm gonna go over. I'm just real quickly. Number two, planting strategies. I feel like, you know, when you decide your plants, it can't just be a matter of choosing the plants you like best and start planting away. I think there's a lot of things to consider. I think there are things that friends you may have, and certainly myself, that I can suggest that'll help your plants do well and survive. And anyway, so we'll go over that. The last thing was maintenance. Not the most exciting word, but I want to ensure success. You know, if you're venturing into this world of planting these different species and getting away from grass, there's lots of challenges you may encounter. So hopefully I can go over some of the solutions, and certainly moving forward, I hope that I'm a resource, that other folks at Trees Atlanta, I've learned so much from different people at Trees Atlanta that I've talked to and asked questions of over the years. I know that me personally, even social media, for the last 5 years especially, I'm always posting pictures of different species. I'm discussing with other people that are interested in plants about, for whatever it may be. It could be bugs, it could be how to get rid of bugs, how to safely maybe kill a plant. Maybe I'm trying to get rid of some invasive plant and I'm trying to kill it without using poison. So those discussions. And so some of these things I won't be able to go into a lot of depth. We've only got less than an hour, of course, now, but so I'm going to go over a lot of things. And I do hope that if you don't ask the question today, and even if I don't answer a question, let's say today, as well as I should, or you might hope for, that you'll reach out to me. And certainly I think Trees Atlanta, I think there's lots of folks at Trees Atlanta that would love to offer advice and give guidance. So anyways, real quick before I jump into, because I'd like to get right to the plants that do well in Atlanta, just wrote in a couple other things. Yeah, I was going to say where I live. I live on Claremont Road in Atlanta. Most folks, if you live in the city, probably know it's a really busy 4-lane highway. So excuse the noise. Certainly, it's one thing to say, but yeah, I hope you come by sometime. It's not that the sign's out for everyone to see, but I really love it when people stop by and see what I've got here, and I'd be more than happy to come out and have coffee with you and chat about whatever you'd like to chat about. So anyways, I guess I'm just going to jump into it. What plants do well in Atlanta? Choosing the right plant. Okay. Before I give a couple, I think I listed that I was going to talk about my top 5 choices. A couple of things real quick. First, I want you to choose what you like. I don't think, anytime whether you go to a store that you're trying to get a plant, I know that some of you may have gone to the Trees Atlanta tree sale. You certainly look at plants. You like the texture of the plant. You certainly care about the size of the plant. I want you to choose what you like. But I know that there are a lot of species that you may not have seen before. Some of the ones I talk about today, you may have seen. A lot of them are probably ones you've heard about. They're not necessarily the most exciting things. I've got about 80 species of trees and plants in my yard, so I'm not going to talk about all of them. And there's some of the ones that I love that I may not even mention today. So it doesn't, yeah, it depends on what you need. Depends on if you're looking for something, understory, like smaller trees or larger trees. I think you'll see some things that I like to talk about, which is a lot about volume, planting more and more, whether it be trees or the different plants. So we'll get into that in just a second. The other is you need to determine the characteristics that you like, that you want, that you need. The look. Ultimately, you need to be able to see mature examples of different species. When you look at a plant and you only have a young version, it's really hard to envision how big it will be and how well it will do in the spot you've got it for. I've got a good bit of my property that is getting hammered with sun all day long, and so most of the species that I'm going to say are my favorites, they're my favorites in that they're tough. They're tough. They're natives that are tough, that grow pretty fast in some cases, and that I've had a lot of success with. My goal is for you to have success. But anyways, I want a design that you'll be happy with. In terms of design, there's no way in an hour call I'm going to be able to know what your landscape looks like and what design might be right for you. But hopefully I'll be able to give you some ideas. And again, I'm more than happy to talk about specific ideas if we meet up later. Let me see. If functional, then it's really important that you consider, I don't know. When I say functional, I wrote down erosion control. I think a lot of times when you plant, whether it be trees or you plant any other plant, ultimately you're trying to, like one of the reasons why you use grass in the first place is to prevent erosion. Sometimes because you don't have the trees and other plants. And so when I'm planting, I'm not just planting a tree, I'm planting in groups. And so I'm thinking a lot about ultimately when it rains a lot, what happens? Where does that water go? I want to plant things that can handle the volume of water, that can absorb it, that can grow well. I don't know if that's the best way I'm describing that. Does it need to be drought resistant? That was more in terms of determining the characteristics. If you're planting something in hardcore sun, it's important you're choosing species that do really well. And I know there's some non-native species out there that do really well that some of you may have found are great, but I'm going to talk about some of the other examples I think do really well. Also finding good mature examples to see in person. My house is certainly one place because I've got some of these examples that I'd love for folks to come by and be able to see what they look like. But there's certainly other folks around that have mature examples. I think it's just a better way to make a decision. I don't want folks to feel so rushed. I feel like so much of our world, certainly in the gardening world, is about planting fast, growing fast. You're looking for something to either block your neighbor or the road or noise and those things are important. And I do think that we can still achieve these things without going with non-native species. Anyways, all right, so I'm just going to jump into the plants I like. You're seeing my face this morning. I want to, and we're going to try and move the camera around a little bit to show you some things. But one thing we found with Zoom, that it's just really difficult to capture most plants on a video. If we had HD video, maybe it would be possible. But the first things, I'm going to list 5 here. I actually wrote down another 5. You know, the list is long for things that I think do really well. Most of these are plants. I guess we'll call them shrubs. That and they're not trees, but again, I love to talk about trees, and I could go on for days about oaks and hickories and beeches and hickories, and I love them all. There's so many wonderful choices that are native to this part of the country. First plant, southern wax myrtle. I think it's something that you can find some places. I've got it all over my yard. Again, I'm not going to go on and on about each species. I'm just going to name them, and certainly you can ask me questions about the specific species if you'd like. Wax myrtle is, I will give you a little bit of background on each species, but each example. Southern wax myrtles, I've got pretty much everywhere in my yard that is getting hit with hard sun, okay? It seems like even if it's not watered, if I'm not able to water it, they do great. They grow about 8 to 10, 8 to 12 foot. It's almost like a small tree. I think they're wonderful when it comes to pruning. If you want it to be more tree-like, they're great doing that, or you can let them stay full at the base and it can be more of a screen. Yeah, I'm not going to go on and on about wax myrtle, but definitely one of my favorite plants that I think does great in Atlanta. I'm going to jump right to a, we'll say, I'll go with my list. There's no particular order. St. John's wort. Okay, this is a low growing shrub that I remember when I first got a small one and planted it in some of my more shady spots. It really just didn't do very well, and I at some point I moved it over to part of the exposed part of my land in the hard sun, and what I found over the last I don't know 5 years is it does great, and it's a ground cover. It almost serves the same purpose as people plant ivy. You know, not something I would advise to use. Ivy, it's got its reasons why people use it. It grows fast and it prevents erosion. I think it oftentimes is used on hills, and a lot of these things that I'm talking about, I do have on my hill. I've got a long hill along here the side of the property. I love the St. John's wort. You know, anyways, viburnum. I put viburnum dentatum, which is arrowwood, but I have found that almost all the viburnums are just great. And I am thinking about the native viburnums. I wrote down acerifolium. This is the maple leaf viburnum. I don't really, I have viburnum nudum. I don't even know what the common name for that is. Doesn't do quite as well, but anyways, I really love viburnums. Is a medium-sized shrub that probably doesn't get more than 6 to 8 feet, and it's just wonderful. I'm just going to jump to wonderful fall color. Yeah, viburnum's awesome fall color. Next thing was river oats. We've got. We could pan over to the right a little bit. I think Andrew's going to be kind enough just to look. I don't think that the video is really going to be able to capture why I love river oats. This is something that is related to the oats that you find at the beach. And when you're at the beach, one of the reasons why river oats are great is they do great in hardcore sun and they prevent erosion. For the sand dunes. I grew up down on the Gulf Coast, and so they were something that I was interested in. It seemed kind of odd to plant them along the roadway, but me planting them on the roadway was simply because I was having trouble finding a ground cover that could prevent erosion. They could prevent erosion on I don't know. It's just hard when you've got a hill in the hard sun and finding the right plant for it. And I just think it's a great, I don't know, unique example. I think some of the things that I'll talk about a little bit later have to do with have a little fun with what you plant. You know, I think it's so much more fun to try something new. I think they're like river oats. Yeah, well, I don't want to go on and on about river oats, but I certainly can talk about river oats forever. They've got oats. They seed a lot. They spread. There's something to be discussed in how, like, do they become in any way a nuisance. I don't think so. I've kind of learned how to manage them, and I think they just look beautiful. They look beautiful all spring long. Here we are in June, and the oats haven't even fully come out. Another few weeks, and they're just going to be glorious. And then as we go throughout the whole summer, they're still going to look beautiful. And as we get into the summertime, the colors, they end up turning copper. Like, I don't even think the oats fall off until probably November. And so it's just, as we sometimes read about, certain plants have all year or all year-round interest. Yeah, that's the word. Not every plant is going to have year-round interest, but I think river oats are just fabulous. Anyways, what else did I write down? That's actually that's 4. I wrote down oak leaf hydrangea. Everybody's heard of oak leaf hydrangea. You know, we're talking 8-10 feet, like max. They're a big shrub. They're not for a small spot, but they are just wonderful in the sun. I just think they're a wonderful choice that looks great. I think the flowers look great when they're in full bloom, and even when they go dormant and they turn brown, they're still beautiful even when they're brown. And the fall colors on hydrangeas are just amazing. Again, sunshine, they can handle it. Drought, they can handle it. Okay. I wrote down, I'll just go throw a few more out there. I only wrote down one tree. I just put white dogwood. And this is, Cornus, Florida. It's, I don't know, I won't go on about dogwoods. We know them in Atlanta. I've heard some people say, oh yeah, but they get sick. I disagree. I think the only reason why dogwoods ever get sick is because folks don't really take care of them. I think they're oftentimes neglected. Their root zones around the base, I think oftentimes they're left out in the middle of a yard. They're getting hammered with sun. That's just, it's more of an understory tree. They love the sun, but anyways, I still think planting dogwoods is a great option. Fothergilla, Fothergilla. Some of you have heard of it. I think it's a wonderful plant also. Another shrub that gets about, I don't know, 8, maybe 10. Does great in the full sun. Wonderful fall color. Really cool flowers in the spring. Coral honeysuckle. That's one of the native vines, which does great in the sun. I love it. Occasionally I've got problems with aphids, but I think it's a fabulous vine. Sometimes you're going to have an issue with bugs. I'm not one for freaking out. Most bugs don't kill whatever they're eating on. I think, there's oftentimes a solution that doesn't include using poison. So anyways, we could talk more about that in person, I guess. Yucca, I put yuccas. I don't know if any folks plant yuccas anymore, but I think they're great. They do great in the hardcore sun. I think they're great on the edge of your property. Flowers are fabulous. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and let me see. How are we on time? All right, so I think I'm doing actually all right with time. I'm not sure if you've got questions that you want me to slow down, but one more thing before you maybe throw a question, if anybody's got any thus far. We have one question.
Question is, how about shade-loving plants or shrubs? Also plant shrubs for understory, say for maple tree.
Understory.
Can you repeat
the question? The question is asking about understory, like suggestions for something more shade loving. It's funny because I didn't used to have very much shade in my yard, but now with 20 years of planting, even some of my younger trees are still 20-25 feet. So I've actually got a good bit of shade going on in the interior of the yard. I love planting ferns, but it's not something that is, they're more delicate. So I plant them, I work with them, I love them, but they're not something that I advise everyone to plant. I'd actually, I feel like I need to walk through the yard to suggest. Let me think on the shade loving. Again, I think some of these questions, there's all sorts of unique questions you might have that even just an email with me, I can certainly throw out some examples. And also one thing real quick to mention is I've got an inventory of the plants that I have, and
there are about 35 species of trees in my yard and about 35 species of plants in my yard. And that's by no means all the great things. These are things that I've tried. One of the things that I loved about the Trees Atlanta tree sale every year, I think there's twice a year, but certainly the one that's in October, was the wonderful selection of different plants. And so a lot of times what I planted was simply picking things that someone else there either suggested or I just wanted to try. And so I've got all sorts of things growing, some things with more luck than others, but yeah, I'm still stumped on my understory, like what exactly to choose. I'll come back. So that is a good question. I'll come back to that. One last thing regarding choice. Fast growing can be great, but do try to practice patience. When I say practice patience, I mean, even when you first plant, there's different things when it comes to patience that I think are important to point out. But even when you're choosing your plants and you're envisioning what your future garden might be, I feel like it's imperative that you just keep in mind that a beautiful garden isn't something that you knock out in a year or two, even 3 or 4. You know, there's some wonderful things that I've planted that have been in the ground for 10 years, and I love to see them 10 years on, how well they're doing. But sometimes it just takes patience. And one of the things that I'll talk about in terms of my next section or discussion point, strategy, is about planting in groups and planting more. It makes it so much more fun when you have different things going on. And while some things may be bigger and more exciting, some of those small things, I still love planting them, taking care of them, and just knowing that in maybe 5 years, it will be really cool. And I think it's such a reward when you invest the time and the effort to water and to mulch well, and when you first plant and to plant well, and to have successful growing plants. That's so much of a reward. Anyways, know that there's some special, practicing patience. Know that there's some special trees and plant species out there, maybe even here, which are so much fun to put your love into. Just don't do the same. I want to hopefully coach folks to don't run down to your big box store and just get what they have, because it's kind of hard to find sometimes options. I understand, but I don't know, call me, let me help you. You know, one of the things I'll mention in here has to do with being able to identify volunteers. I think one of the things we forget is around your yard, even in your neighbor's yard, there are all sorts of wonderful things that are sprouting up just naturally from somewhere else in your environment that if you knew what it was, you could either maybe dig it up and replant it, or you might just decide to take care of it. I've got lots of plants where when it sprouted up and I identified it, then that became, that was where it's growing. That's where it wanted to grow, and I'm going to take care of it. And I think it's really cool. I've got plants that were literally 2 inches tall that are now, 8-foot trees that are beautiful. I've got numerous hickory trees that started this small. I've got all sorts of really cool oaks that I planted when they were 6 inches tall. So it's something I'll probably mention in a second. So I'm going to jump. Next thing is planting strategy, or my suggestion to plant strategically. And I've got some points I want to go over. 10:30 was my goal time. How are we doing? Any other questions before I jump to just check real quick? Cool. Yeah, I feel like, if I could walk around with each of you, I really wish I could do this more one-on-one. I think it could be really fun to walk around and go, ooh, look at what's growing. That's the sort of thing. But I just know that on a camera, it's just not going to work. So hopefully my talking points are still interesting and you're getting something out of it. Anyways, on to planning strategy, as I've named it. So after determining what does well, I guess I would say that, make a list of the sorts of plants you were thinking of. Make that list. You'd be thinking like, one of my next things. So you've already, of course, thought about your location. You're not going to decide to redo your entire yard. I think, pick a part of your yard. It may be the edge of your property that's just you can't get anything to grow and you're struggling, maybe that's the spot to try and to take over and to make it your little project. I mean, my whole yard has become a project. The entire front and back are all native. Now they're, anyways, so, but first, you can't try and do it all at once. So anyways, think about design also. Design, not everybody's a landscape architect. I don't think you need to be an architect. I think it certainly helps to ask people's advice and have a little bit, maybe more experience with balance. And, the reason why you may plant 3 of something instead of 2. I was taught years ago that even numbers was somehow, I don't know, I'm not going to say it's bad feng shui to plant two of something, but if you have a walkway and you plant 2 of the same tree on each side of that walkway, I would say, no, don't do that. I was always taught odd numbers. And so everything in my yard is usually either I've got 3 of this tree, I've got 5 of a certain tree, or maybe I only have 1 of this tree. But certainly when I plant them, I'm planting them in singular plantings. But another thing I wrote down, which was something I just thought about, a concept, and that was, think about a transition to islands. Okay. Now, when you think of the word island, I want you to envision you plant 1 tree, you mulch around it. Okay. We're not going to get into mulch big time today, even though it's something I think is extremely important. I talked about in my last workshop, which is about the importance of the root zone around anything you plant. Okay. But we're not going into that. But I want you to think about the typical tree and island, okay, or the circle, a donut that goes around it. That is an island, okay? And so when I say transition to more islands, I mean lots of these. And what I want you to think of is not just the singular tree and an island. I want you to think about, when I do a planting, it's not 1 tree, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 trees. Maybe it's 1 or 2 eventual large trees. Maybe you've even got some existing plants. Okay, but I want you to think about building 1 large island, not a perfect semicircle circle that doesn't, think about ovals, think about shapes that complement your yard. Think about like designs. You could create a big island that would contain lots of trees and lots of plants. One of the things I'm going to talk about in just a second has to do with planting in groups, and so I think the islands and the idea of planting in groups, okay, is important, because the roots of the trees, the roots of all these plants end up commingling and growing together. Okay, they end up giving each other support. Don't think so much about or be worried about them stealing nutrients or stealing water. All those roots going together ends up giving strength to all the roots. I don't know. I can't describe the symbiotic relationship that exists between, or I'm not going to go into it. I don't know it so much either, but I know that underneath in the soil, the worms, the bugs, the spaces, the gaps, the rocks, all of that is working together. All the roots of all the plants, they're all together, creating a good environment for the plants. And so, anyways, I kind of got off in terms of the islands, but I think ultimately you start off with, 1 tree, 1 circle, that becomes like a larger island. And I feel like you end up creating that island, but then you also have other islands. You have islands all over your yard. And in between those islands, maybe when you start off, it may be grass. Maybe you can't necessarily mulch your entire yard from the start. Okay. But as you start growing these spaces, and improving these spaces and making them more these positive habitats for plants, for birds, for bugs, having more shade, the shade of all the plants, they end up helping each other, making the effects of drought less harmful. All these plants being, even here on the side. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting off a little bit. I don't know if the island concept makes complete sense. I think ultimately, even those pathways that go between that maybe are grass on one day, what they become in my yard is you have islands throughout the yard, and everything in between, or it's just more mulch. It becomes just a path where I can walk around my yard, and yeah, I just don't have grass. I don't have to worry about the grass for any reason. I don't have to worry about it I don't have to worry about the fertilizer. I don't have to worry about keeping it alive. Yeah, anyways. Think about great, awesome mulch islands that surround existing new plantings. Also think about future paths. Plant in groups. Utilize plant groupings to benefit all. Plant in the shadows of existing plants. Give yourself license to plant in volume. Plant a lot. I know it's expensive. I can't expect everyone to go to the store and buy 30 plants. But I do say that, there's lots of reasons to plant a wide range of different plants. You plant more than one large tree, because what if something happens to that big tree? There's all sorts of things that can happen even to a young tree. Sometimes some trees just don't like the spot and just don't do well. Anyways, this planting in groups is a big point. But anyways, I feel like I've already talked about it. I don't want to belabor it.
So Scott, you've mentioned a lot of concepts that you employ in your arboretum in your yard. I'm wondering if we can take them on a little tour at some point soon, so they can see some of these in practice and some specifics on how you have managed these concepts.
I think we can probably just walk up there right now and give it give a look. I've still got a few more things on strategy. I plant things which will be protectors. Even with, I'm gonna go ahead and stand up, and we're gonna try moving, and hopefully the camera's not too shaky. Let me see. I guess we were gonna maybe walk over there. I think about planting and groupings. It's kind of funny. I've got the river oats here growing at the base of a yellow buckeye here, and this entire space right here ends up being the part of the root zone for this yellow buckeye. This habitat, all this area underneath all these river oats is actually quite shaded right now. This is a space that would have gotten hammered with sun, and now it's forever got a pretty good amount of shade. And so this is kind of a group, I wouldn't call it group planting, but where planting things kind of together ends up, I guess you can still hear me, so I can still walk away. I think of, in general, like when I think of planting things which will become protectors, it makes me think of my dogs. I know that sometimes what I'll do is I'll, how did I write that? The whole plant things which will become protectors. I put notes, sometimes existing plants slated for maybe that you want to pull out. I said it actually can be kept as a protector. I know one of the things I did in my yard was all along this space. I actually used to have, I almost don't want to admit it because some folks are hurt when I tell them I cut down some Japanese maples. But up here on this side of my property, you had two pretty large Japanese maples, okay? Before I cut those down, yes, I cut them down, I'm sorry. Before I cut them down, I was planting all sorts of other plants in its root zone, I guess, because I knew I was going to take it out. I don't want to focus on this. I just feel like it really was a good, I guess, strategy to succeed in planting some plants. I felt like a lot of plants really in the early days, they really didn't, they needed a little cover, whether it be dogs running through in my backyard. I felt like that was certainly the case, that if I was going to plant something young, if I just had it out in the middle of the yard, it was going to get trampled by the dogs. It was going to get peed on by the dogs. And so I think my point here is think about how, and it's not just plants. Like in my last workshop, I talked about logs, big pieces of wood being placed in front of plants to give them protection. And so when I talk about plants giving other plants protection, it is again about that root zone. It's about protecting it from traffic, and it's also to create a space underneath whatever it's growing to be more shady. If it's less traffic, if there's more roots, when it pours down rain, it holds the moisture better. anyways, I'm hoping that's conveyed. I'm not sure how's the video. When we can walk up in the yard a little bit just for a different look at yeah, I almost want to just point out, I mean, this is St. John's wort over here, which again, I'm not sure how well it's going to show off. It's got 2 different viburnums up here, and I've even got devil's walking stick that's growing up in here. And so there's a lot of things going on. I think one of the things what I'll talk about when I get to maintenance pretty soon is I plant things without a fear that it might be too much to handle. There were people, I've numerous times had people worried about some of the different things that I planted, maybe being, that it might be too much. It might be, I don't know. It's kind of funny because folks, mow their lawn every single week. They have all these different chores they do to keep up with grass. I feel like the things that I'm doing to keep my yard up are very minimal. There's a little bit of, I have to worry about invasive species and trying to work with that. So that's one of the things. But in general, I'll let it grow. And when things get a little bit big or need to be cut back, I cut it back. If something needs to be pruned out, I prune it out. It's one of the things that I even talk about maintenance is that, I planted more knowing that some of the things might end up having to be cut out. There are trees in here that I love, that I think are really cool, that I'm probably going to cut out. And the reasons, because like I said, I've got 35 species of trees on a third of an acre. So there's just a lot. Sorry, I'm making Andrew change. We're going to maybe walk up here. I'm not sure how, this is maybe a little noisy with Claremont up here. Andrew's shaking his head that we're okay. Yeah, we got low growth sumac here. We've got Pathagilla. I've got milkweed going nuts. The milkweed kind of going a little bit nuts, but I'm okay. It's a little bit messy in here right now. I need to get my pruning shears out, maybe cut back some things. I've even got river oats that have started growing up here. Anyways, I'll go ahead and jump to the next thing I wrote on my list when we're talking about strategy. I said identify volunteers. I mentioned it briefly. Like this hickory is about, what is that, 10, 12 feet tall. This one actually came from my mother's yard in Florida. I believe it's just a pig nut hickory. I planted it when it was 2 inches tall. I dug it up in Florida and planted it out here in the yard, and here we go. It's just awesome. It was a volunteer. I just think it's such a special thing to we have. Oh, I lost audio. So all right, cool. I wrote also, when I think about volunteers, I think a lot of times folks think about something small they find and they want to transplant it. I just want to say, this is to a volunteer, or if you just got something that's kind of big in your yard, please do not try and transplant big, mature plantings. You're probably, there are certain things that can survive that. And if where you're digging isn't near any other important plants or special plants, then that's fine. But I like to give that warning, because I hate to think that someone goes digging up an azalea at the base of a white oak and digging down really close to the trunk of the tree. Anyways, I just typically, if something's not right, if it's big, just cut it down. I don't know. Maybe that's not going to fly, but just be careful. I think in the interest of trying to, repurpose some plant that's in the wrong place. I understand the desire to go digging it up, but I just think it can be detrimental to the trees or plants around. Last thing for strategy, what's our time at? All right, I have 2 minutes for plant like a pro, okay? I put aim high always. Meaning, hopefully most folks on this call probably have done a tree planting with, whether it be Trees Atlanta or some other organization. And you're taught to plant certainly, but you're taught by numerous people, and each person you plant a tree with does things a little bit different. Sometimes people are a little more sensitive or a little more particular about these things. Anyways, my point is quality counts. You know, the hole being dug right, it being scored on the edges, that's important. And so this doesn't go on and on, because I'm not going to go on and on about planting. You know, if you don't have someone who knows what they're doing, if you're not totally sure about the best way to do it, then talk to someone who does. Trees Atlanta certainly is a great resource. I'm more than happy to help. I'll put down, do it like Medusa. Medusa being the Greek god. My hair, I want you to think about anytime you plant anything, it could be a plant or a tree, those roots need to be going outwards. Okay, just a reminder, everyone. I feel like I've seen so many people who are into planning who don't realize this and don't invest enough time to do it right. Okay, sometimes.
On that note, we have a question.
Okay.
Any recommendations for nursery resources for native plants other than?
I'm gonna say no. I know me personally, I've got my own little nursery where I'm growing this or that, but you know, we're talking about a 2.5 foot, you know, different types of oaks that I'm planting. And so while I would potentially even give those away to some people if they stop by, I'm not the best resource to find these plants. I do think that you can find some of these species, even at big box stores, but I think it's pretty hard to find. And, you know, I hate to say you have to wait till a Trees Atlanta tree sale. I know that the Georgia Native Plant Society has plant sales. I know that, what was it? Perimeter College, I think there's a lot of the universities all around the city that if you Google native plant sales, you will find plants. Now, trees, not as easy. I think still Trees Atlanta is the best resource, but again, it's not like you can call Trees Atlanta and they've got a tree waiting for you there. But you know, yeah, if I don't get too many phone calls, I'll certainly try to help anyone who reaches out to me. If you're looking for something, I'll at least tell you what I think. I think there are nurseries that are in the South that you could probably drive to get some of these things, but I can't say I know. Last thing, any other questions? Hopefully that helped, Jason. Last thing under planting like a pro, I just put smart mulch, wide mulch. I mean, when I mentioned the islands, I don't know if that's the best way to describe it. I mean, we're sitting right here just in the middle of a pathway, which is mulched. You know, the roots of all these plants around me are kind of going up underneath my feet. Everything in my yard is mulched now. And whenever I see fallen wood, I use the wood to create kind of borders for my pathway. And I put them around my trees also, which is the last thing I guess I'll mention about planting like a pro. Use rocks and logs. I mentioned that in my last workshop. I guess we'll walk a little bit further up here. I don't know if you can get a better view. You know, just in this space right here. I mean, this is a yellowwood right here, which unfortunately you can't pan up to really appreciate it. It's a fabulous species. I've got just kind of a makeshift circle of pieces of wood all the way around it. There are rocks in here. Everything underneath here is protecting out from the trunk. Now the roots for this yellowwood, this has been in the ground for probably 10 years. I probably planted it about 6 or 7 feet, and it's about, I don't know, 15 feet now. It's fabulous. It's a little bit crowded in here, and there's some of the other trees that I've got in here also, which I might actually go ahead and cut out at some point to make room. Anyways, all right, now on the maintenance. That's my last area that I was hoping to share some suggestions. Okay, maintenance. First thing I wrote down was mulch, water, mulch, water. Once you've got your plantings, you know, I think so often people do a planting, they water it for a week, 2, 3 weeks, and it kind of starts to fall by the wayside. Like, you know, if there's a drought, you know, I feel like, you know, my neighbors, and they're wonderful, and they're always excited to see my text when I'm texting them to please water their plants. But I want folks to take more responsibility. If you're obviously on this call, you obviously love planting. Just invest more in your tree long term. Just I don't know. I don't like the way I'm explaining that. Maybe we'll come back to water. It seems like a no-brainer, water. I just know that, you know, my trees, I am babying them for 3 years, and I'm using mulch and logs and these group plantings to all assist with better growing and less stress on me. I don't want to have to go water a plant every single day. And so when I'm using mulch smartly, when I plant smartly, when I'm using rocks, and when I'm using group plantings, it's all in the name of more quickly achieving a place where my plants do well without me having to constantly guard them. And hopefully in 3 or 4 years, you really, for the most part, I don't need to do any watering. We just got dumped on yesterday, just the last week or two. We've had a lot of really heavy rains. If you go out into my yard, this is something I was thinking of. It was pouring down rain, and I look out at my yard, and I look around the entire yard. There's no runoff. The water is being absorbed. Okay, it is something that's hard to explain. You almost have to see it. You know, if you go into the forest and there's a heavy rain, what's it look like? The same. It is being absorbed underneath all those logs. All those leaves are breaking the rain from hitting the ground. It's helping slow down the rain so that it has more time to absorb and so it doesn't run off. Anyways, celebrate the rain, celebrate when it rains, the absorption. I just now said that. Only 2 more things, and then my takeaways. 2 more things are smart pruning and cutting back. And I put in when cutting down is much better than digging and damaging. I already talked about that. I guess my cutting back is, you know, don't be, you know, sometimes you got to cut something back. And in the name of planning volume and planning lots of stuff, it seems like kind of an odd strategy. I'm saying my strategy is to cut stuff down. So I'm not saying that. I think in my case, I kind of went nuts, you know, in a good way. You know, I got excited. It was fun to plant lots of different species. And so the reality is it's a little congested in this small space. And so that's okay. You know, I had fun planting whatever the species or that species, but there's a few of these things that I'm going to cut down. And that's okay. So I think that's my main point there. And I guess like something like river roads, you know, it grows up, it's kind of out of hand. When I cut that river roads back hard, it's done. You know, it won't grow up. I don't know. It handles the cutback just fine. And I can sometimes, you know, change the design of the yard by maybe a pretty heavy bit of pruning on a certain type of plant, not necessarily a tree. When I say pruning, I may just be meaning some sort of shrub that just grows really fast. Some shrubs spread, they sucker, they start spreading out. Don't worry about it. Don't freak out. Just cut it back. Last thing, invasives suck. That's what I called it. Invasives suck. Most of you probably had dealing with some invasive or another. I'm not going to go into specifics right now, but I'm more than happy to help guide on this on the next workshop. I will be talking more about invasives, hopefully helping you identify the invasives. You know, when I look down on the ground right now, I'm not sure if I can find something right here, but I'd like to be able to think that when you see a certain really bad species pop up, you're able to identify it fast, so you can grab it, pull it up while you can still get the root. Because some species, as you know, once they get going, they're really hard to get under control. And I absolutely don't like using any sort of poison. I've got some fun ideas about how to kill natives. I'm not going to go into it today because we're getting close to the end. But again, if you've got a particular native or invasive that you're needing help controlling, give me a call or send me an email and we can talk. All right. My takeaways are next. What time are we at? We're at 10:50 about?
10:53.
Okay, 7 minutes. So that's maybe in time for me to run through these really quick and still have a minute or two for questions if you have any. Takeaways. one, thanks everybody for listening thus far. I hope this was somewhat educational and not too all over the place of the different things I was talking about. I think these conversations are something that it's tough to talk to a whole big group of people because everybody's got different needs. I think a lot of folks may have wanted to talk really more about the actual species and about examples. And I love talking about all the species. It's just, or how certain species are, I found them to do. So I don't know. Anyways, I hope you still found that fun. My takeaways, I put, or what I wrote down was help your fellow neighbors. For those that are knowledgeable and have hopefully good ideas. If there's anything I've shown you today that you think is a good idea, please share with your neighbors. You know, I know in my neighborhood there's probably 50 houses, and I've got several neighbors that have planted a bunch of trees that we have conversations about mulch and about watering, and I really love their interest, and I try and promote that. I try to encourage them calling me whenever, and I hope other folks do that also. I feel like what I've got here, which isn't as easy to show on video, but I know in my neighborhood, one of the things I used to always envision was this could be a space, a place that when my neighbors ride by, that at some point, once it got pretty, which I think it is pretty when you ride by, that the neighbors would slow down. The neighbors that are walking by, walking their dogs, when they look up here now, they go, wow, that's something different. That's not grass. That's not the same. It's something unique. I don't think you have to copy me. I think what I'm doing here is just like, I'm just going off the reservation. I'm trying to just have fun with it. I love planning stuff. I love trying new things. And so I hope other folks do this more the same. I just think that the same grass lawn look, it's just not that exciting. I think it's so much more fun to try something else. Celebrate being different, choosing a garden that doesn't need gasoline and noise pollution. Every single Saturday morning, the neighbors are going nuts with their blowers and the gasoline things. I just think it would be really nice if we could hear the birds more. It was funny. That was one of my other ending points. Celebrate the birds. I don't know. I think most of us in Atlanta, if you've got a garden, most of you do, it's so wonderful, the birds, and not just the birds, the butterflies, and not just the butterflies. There's all sorts of bugs and creatures that are roaming around our gardens that I just think is so cool to stop a moment and appreciate those things and try to create a space that's a little more habitable by them. I've got water features. Yeah, I'd like to have more water features. I'd like to have a pond, anyways. I think that's just something to think about. And the last thing, I guess this goes back to the water thing. I just wrote, make a pledge to water all your plants and trees during drought. We've had really good rain lately, but another drought is almost inevitable. And so, think about watering and think about what your mulch looks like around your plants, and I don't know, talking to me, if you're not sure what that mulch might be better if it looked like, I think that's all I've got today. So I'll open it up and see if anybody's got any questions they want to ask. If Michelle or Andrew think of something I forgot to mention, throw them my way, please. And I won't feel bad if there aren't questions. It means I covered everything. I guess
can you hear me, Scott?
I can.
Yeah, thank you everybody for listening to us today. Seems like a lot of participants are asking for other nurseries and locations where they could find plants. So thank you to Bobby and Judy in the chat who's been sharing some of those nurseries. So Plant Delights Nursery in North Carolina has great plants according to Bobby, and also Judy mentioned that Oh, she shared the list of nurseries who were selling their plants at the Georgia Native Plant Sale, the Society Plant Sale. So our sales at Trees Atlanta are on the first weekend of April and the first weekend of October. So we hope we can see you there. Yeah. And there's one question here also. Do you have any suggestions on plants that attract insects, bugs, birds, and butterflies?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I know that's still a pending question from before. Yeah, the milkweed is one of the ones that I've been learning myself more about some of the, I guess, smaller plants. I think initially I was more of a planting trees, and when it came to shrubs, I probably stuck to your hydrangeas, and certainly initially got into wax myrtles, and really I think the wax myrtles were one of the ones I just loved. It actually was because of birds. There's the fruit of the wax myrtle. Actually, the wax myrtles are just full of birds when they're fruiting. I think one thing I find is there's so much of the different things you plant that at one time or another during the season they're gonna attract some sorts of bugs or butterflies. You know, I don't think that hydrangeas necessarily, I don't see butterflies and other bugs flocking to them as much as, let's say, my viburnum. I'm looking over my arrowwood viburnum that's blooming right now, and just yesterday the butterflies were on them. I've got bottlebrush buckeye, which is another shrub that I didn't even mention as one of my favorites. I love bottlebrush buckeye. The butterflies love them this time of year. We could certainly, I don't know if Andrew, I mean, time-wise it's kind of late. I know some people may want to drop off, but that's totally fine. But I certainly don't mind wandering around the yard a little bit. Let me see. I almost need to look around to see what other species. Yeah, I've got my rattlesnake master that I love, but I can't think of. Yes, there's no doubt that when you think about the different species that attract bugs, some jump out. I think when you see butterflies, it always is like, ooh, they're so cool. Butterflies, no doubt. See, there's a viburnum right there blooming. There's of course no bugs, so unfortunately I can't say, look at all the beautiful, all the cool bugs that are flocking. I've got the St. John's wort, which I mentioned before, which has got yellow flowers, which are blooming right now, but they're not out. I think this time of the morning, that might be showing let me see.
And Scott,
Yeah.
we can stay around and answer some additional questions, but I want to respect everybody's time. I know it's 11 a.m. We will send a recording of these presentations. So if you need to leave now, then you'll be able to listen again to this webinar and just see all the questions that everybody else is asking. And thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Andrew. So we can wait and see who wants to hang around.
Yeah, and there's two more
Ooh,
questions.
Sweet Spire.
Yeah.
Sweet Spire.
Mhm.
It's funny because Sweet Spire is not blooming anymore. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to see it. I love Sweet Spire. I really feel like that's a little bit probably not full sun. 2 questions. Go for it. Is Michelle reading? Or?
Yes, I can read the questions for you. So if you have any plans that will keep mosquitoes away.
I like that question. I've certainly considered it. I've got, not so much I've got, because it's not about necessarily just because I don't have something doesn't mean that there's not something that's perfect for whatever anyone may ask about. I don't think of a blooming plant that somehow is keeping mosquitoes away. I know that I'm pointing to it. I'm drawing a blank. My sassafras. I've always been told sassafras was a natural repellent of bugs. One of the reasons why I've got a couple of sassafras that are actually pretty big now. They're a good almost 20 feet tall. One's here, one's over here. Not so you're not. It's gonna. Yeah. Anyways, one reason why I planted them close to the house was the thinking that the roots of sassafras, because they kind of maybe it was good just to kind of be around the house to kind of keep. I guess I was thinking termites. I don't know if termites are actually somehow worried about sassafras roots. Anyways, sorry. That's not. I don't have a great answer for mosquitoes. I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. What about the other question? Maybe.
Oh, somebody was
better.
asking if we could provide some extra additional resources, like some of the links that participants have shared about other nurseries. So what I'll do is that I'll send a follow-up email with a survey and the recording, and also a list of nurseries that and resources that were shared on this webinar.
And I didn't mention it. I mean, I'm more than happy to share my list of the species I have. You know, if you look at the list, maybe you'll be like, you have a question. If once you see it on the list, since I'm not doing such a great job, I'm looking over and seeing the goldenrod is another species. Not so much shade, but certainly one that the bees and the butterflies love. I feel like I know one of the things that if you go to the Trees Atlanta tree sale, or even any of the native plant sales, I mean, I think there's usually lots and lots of examples. I just think that depending on when I shouldn't even be speaking. I'm not a bug expert, but certainly one of the reasons why I choose what I'm choosing was because I was hoping to attract butterflies and other good bugs. I wanted to be able to attract even. I mean, yeah. So I don't know. I think most of us, you go to any of these plant sales, everything they have is probably good for different bugs, different insects. It's just, I don't know. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for specifics for the bugs, but I'm more than happy to share the list if anybody cares to see what my opinion was or what my experience is on a particular species. So I can share that. You can send a note if you would like me to share that with you.
What type of mulch do you recommend?
1 second for the buzzing motorcycle. What type of mulch? I guess I would usually advise against buying bagged mulch, just so you're not buying bags and bags of plastic, you know, with mulch in it. It doesn't mean that there's not some good mulch. I think how some mulch or what trees they get the mulch from makes me a little concerned to just get them in a bag from somewhere I don't know. I've got a huge pile of mulch over there. I know that you can contact companies that cut down trees, God forbid, that if you reach out to them, you can sometimes get them to dump a whole load. If you're looking for smaller amounts of mulch, there's no really great way. I know that some of the places that sell rocks or stones, they will also sell mulch, and you can get a truckload of mulch. That's certainly another way. I personally use, you know, not only the mulch that I got a pile of, but like I've said in my last workshop, whenever any big tree, I don't know if you want to go show, maybe, I mean, let's go back. Remember, this is the tree we did the mulch workshop at just like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And this was an example of what I call mulch, because there's mulch around it, but you can see these logs. I still call mulch. Now, right now, this is new wood. And so these haven't broken down. These aren't going to break down for, you know, it'll take 5 or 10 years for these to break down. I don't want to say they're not mulch though. Right now, they're not really adding a lot to the soil, but they are protecting this space around this tree. This is a black oak that I planted. It's about 10 feet, 12 feet now. It's doing great. I call this mulch, although, yeah, I think most folks think about mulch as being ground up wood. I mean, this is pine. I'm fine with pine. I'm fine with I don't know any species of tree where the wood type is going to hurt the plant. yeah, I would just, so I wouldn't, I think it's more about some types of mulch breaks down differently. If you get pine bark, big chunks of bark, I don't know, that's not creating that much of a I don't know, thick dank. I mean, when I pick up mulch, you know, when I'm looking at that mulch, like I don't want it to get yucky and nasty. It should be, if you know the word, dank. Like that's what mulch should do. And if you look at mulch once you put down, you know, 3 or 4 months from now, it started to break down. There's worms underneath it. It's moist underneath it. That's the purpose of mulch. This is to do that, but also protect the roots underneath these rocks. It's moist. There's worms. It protects the roots. So I use rocks and logs to do the same thing that I want mulch to do. Mulch, again, is to prevent evaporation. Mulch is doing lots of things. It prevent traffic from walking through. And so that the mulch that you put down, once it breaks down, the nutrients go back into the soil. And so when we say mulch, it is kind of more complicated. So again, I love talking about mulch, and hopefully that helped a little bit.
What companies do you recommend?
I can't really recommend. I mean, I think over the years, I've reached out to people that I've known at Trees Atlanta, because I was looking to support I don't want to call it support. It's not like I'm paying for the mulch, but I reach out to respectable companies that do tree pruning, let's say. So I'd like to, I don't know, I guess that's all I've done. I mean, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't want to throw out a particular name because it's not like I'm endorsing. Anyways, we're just talking about mulch. I don't think there's some major fear. I know one thing that I would consider, that if you're calling a company to get them to drop off mulch, you kind of want to know where that mulch came from. Not so much because of the type tree, but I think one thing that gets forgotten is when they do work at someone's house and they cut down a tree, let's say, oftentimes they may be grinding up other things and dumping it in that same load. So you could end up getting seeds that are in there from something they've cut down, maybe berries from some invasive plant, so that when you dump it, you could end up spreading. Someone did ask last time about, is there some fear of any disease that would be spread by the mulch? I don't think that's really a problem. Is it possible? Sure. But in general, there's no really concern. Obviously, when you leave a pile of mulch for a while, it'll get kind of moldy and stuff under there. Don't worry about that. It's just mold. It's just mold. It's just another plant. It's not going to hurt anything. So, yeah, I guess I'll stop there. Any more questions?
There was a question also about, would you recommend to contact the Forestry Service to get plants?
I don't know. I don't know of the Forestry Service having any suggestions, but you know, it seems like something like the Forestry Service, it wouldn't surprise me that they've got some sort of, they probably have some response. They would give you a little bit of help there. We're talking about, what was the actual question? The Forestry Service helping like get find plants?
Would you recommend to contact the Forestry Service to get plants?
Yeah, I can't recommend, but I'm not saying that they're not the place to check with. I think that someone you got a couple of suggestions. I forgot the name in North Carolina. It doesn't surprise me. I think that they're nurseries scattered about that absolutely are growing wonderful sorts of things. I just don't know them. I don't know if it's as simple as just Googling nurseries and finding them. I think, if you did find the name of a nursery, you just want to, if you just call them and say, do you have a wide selection? I mean, they could easily say, yeah, we have lots. But then when you get there, it could be, this could be an hour, 2 hours outside the city, and you could find yourself not really having the choice you hoped for. So hopefully the ones they suggested, I absolutely know that an organization like, I guess I'll say Georgia Native Plant Society that you have that are more devoted to natives specifically. I don't know. There's folks like that heck, I could even try and find some. Yeah, I don't even mind trying to help you if I can, but I can't say I know.
Yeah, and another question was like, how do you plant near an extremely large oak that loses 10 billion leaves? How do you plant near a big oak?
I love that question. Whether my answers is good enough for you, I would say it's funny because I've got funny. Right behind me is a southern red oak that is unfortunately was targeted by the state to cut down because it's got a little bit of a lean toward the road, and so I was always I was in this kind of like, well, I feel like I'm gonna lose my tree. I want to plant some other trees over here. I think the solution, just to get to the point, is this isn't the only example. The big tree I have in my yard where I was worried about the root zone around it and planting, and I'm like, well, I can't go digging a huge hole right here. Certainly, as I've learned more about the importance of the root zone, I really was worried about that. And so my suggestion is this: don't plant. There is no right way to plant a big container tree at the base of a big tree. I don't care if you're 20 feet off the base, you're still in the immediate, the important root zone. I mean, I'm off, this is good 15 feet. I wouldn't go digging a big hole even here. It's too close. In the old days, maybe I would have done so and not realized that really is not a good idea. My suggestion now is to, one, don't plant a big tree, plant a small tree. If you plant something small, and I mean pretty small, you can do it. I feel like, when I go in and I start digging, I'm surgically going down. And when I'm digging my hole, I'm being really careful. If I'm going to plant a tree that's a little bit bigger, I guess I would suggest that when you dig that hole, just when you dig the hole, don't just go hacking with a pitch axe. You need to be very deliberate in being careful. If you get to a tree, let's say you get a root that's a pretty big root, it's not the end of the world. I think you can make a clean cut, just like if you prune a branch, you make a good prune, you make a good cut so it can heal. If you make a cut on a root, don't just hack it and leave it in there. Make a clean cut under the ground. Try and fit your new tree in the hole carefully. Once a tree is in the hole, I would also say that doubly important is watering that tree. If you've got damaged roots from the tree above, the big oak above, I want to know that for the next year or two, that space is being watered and taken care of. I feel like if you do that, anytime there's been let's say you have a work done where they cut a deep hole for the sewer line. Okay, this happened in the back of my yard. 2 of my big white oaks. Unfortunately, one of them's dead now because of that deep cut. That was at least 8 foot down, probably 3 or 4 foot wide. They probably cut roots on my big oak that were like this big. Okay, that was not cool. I wish I hadn't have done it. And so since that day, I make sure, try not to ever dig holes. But I know sometimes space is limited. You really want to plant something. I'm just going to say, go back to the original, plant small. I know you got to practice some patience. I know that stinks, but there's certain species of trees that one might grow fast. So maybe what you choose to plant small is something you can look at. And I can help with that. If you want some suggestions, even if you're interested in a small tree to plant, I might even be able to help you with that. I've got some really cool things, mostly a few different oak species in the backyard, but I've got some young black gums. And again, I think it is possible sometimes if you get a small 7-gallon black gum or a small 7-gallon oak, I think that's about maybe 5, or they're not that big. Break those roots up really well. Take time when you plant. I mean, you can get away with that tree. You're not going to want to plant a 15-gallon white oak at the base of another oak, I mean, you're gonna have to dig such a huge hole. That's not cool. All right, so maybe that's too long of an answer, but hopefully that helps.
Last question.
Yeah, sure.
Last question is, would you recommend fertilizer?
I'm gonna say 100% no on anything non-organic. I haven't used fertilizer anywhere in any of my plantings, maybe ever. I think, I don't know. I think, I don't think it's necessary. I think when you dig down, like I have a compost, uh, going in the back. And so I sometimes will add that or sprinkle that around top of my plants. I might even add some of that in my mixture. If I'm doing a planting, I add rocks, small rocks, pebbles. We still good? Like in my planting, I think about not so much the fertilizer, because clay is not evil. Clay is not without any nutrients. And I think sometimes people think of when you just have clay, there's no value. And I think that's just not the case. I think there are amendments. I think I usually, like, moderation. Don't go dumping half of a bag of some water saver amendment. It's not even dirt. I think in the dirt should be dirt. Okay. I think that sand can be good for drainage. I think small rocks mixed in, sprinkled in as you're planting are awesome to help for better drainage. I think when you have even bigger rocks down in the hole, bigger rocks are things that the roots end up wrapping around. It does good also. Again, if you've got anything organic that is going to add nutrients, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think fertilizer, when I think of it, just think of it as man-made. There's environmental reasons why I wouldn't want to use it. I just haven't seen. I don't see the need. I think it's one of those things that we're kind of we learned over the last 20 years that it was something we needed, but I just don't think it's like, I guess how my analogy would be, if you eat healthy, you eat fruits and you eat vegetables and you have a balanced diet, I'm not saying maybe that's not the same as vitamins. I'm just saying, take care of your plants, water your plants. That's the most important, not the fertilizer. And I guess I would say, yeah, I would discourage it. So.
Well, thank you so much, Scott, and thank you everybody for your questions. I've added Scott's email here if you have any more questions, and I'll add it in the follow-up email as well, and a few more resources in the recording. So thank you again for joining us. Hopefully we could see you again at another class. Thank you and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Michelle.